The Elder Scrolls has some of the most terrifying magic in all of fiction, from schools that let you rewrite someone's memories to disciplines that literally treat the universe as an instrument you can retune. Today I'm breaking down the 10 most powerful forms of magic in the entire Elder Scrolls universe, and every single entry on this list is more insane than the last. Starting with one that most people completely underestimate: necromancy. Necromancy feels like the obvious starting point for a list about powerful magic, and honestly, it is. But here's the thing, it's the floor of this list. Every entry after this only gets more unhinged, so the fact that necromancy is the tamest thing we're covering should tell you exactly where we're headed. Also known as the Black Arts, necromancy is a sub-school of conjuration that deals with the enslavement of involuntary souls and their bodies. Soul trapping lets practitioners steal the soul of a dying creature and imprison it inside a soul gem, which can then be used for enchantment or recharging weapons. You kill something, trap its soul in a rock, and use that rock to make your sword hit harder, which is, not ideal for the soul in question. But before you write this off as standard evil wizard stuff, hear me out. The Dunmer don't just tolerate necromancy, they actively practice it as part of their religious culture. When used for burial rituals, they call it spirit magic, and animating a deceased person's flesh is considered completely righteous. State-sanctioned corpse puppeteering, just another Tuesday in Morrowind. And then there's Arkay's Law, which prevents the souls of men, beastmen, and elves from being used without consent. The fact that an entire divine legal framework exists specifically to regulate necromancy tells you everything. They didn't ban it, they lawyered it. But if necromancy is the most regulated magic in Tamriel, the next entry is one that barely has rules at all: blood magic. Most magic in Tamriel runs on magicka. You absorb it from the environment, channel it through your body, and cast a spell. Blood magic skips that entire process. Instead, it uses raw biological vitality as fuel. Your blood, someone else's blood, it doesn't matter. As long as something is bleeding, you've got a power source. And on paper, that sounds almost elegant in its simplicity. No need to study at the College of Winterhold for 40 years. No need to meditate on the nature of magicka. Just open a vein and get to work. The Mormaris, Tamriel's reclusive sea elves, demonstrated exactly this kind of proficiency during events on Khenarthi's Roost. These aren't fringe practitioners hiding in caves. They're an entire civilization that incorporated blood magic into their toolkit. Even in Elder Scrolls Online, the sorcerer skill line features passive abilities literally designated as blood magic, granting healing effects when you strike enemies with dark magic. So, the game itself acknowledges this as a legitimate functional system. Here's where it gets complicated though. Blood magic isn't inherently evil. There's no cosmic law that says channeling vitality makes you a bad person, but it doesn't need to be evil to destroy you. The real danger is psychological. Practitioners report an addictive thrill of power when using blood magic, something comparable to a drug dependency that escalates with every use. You start by drawing a little of your own blood for a healing spell. Totally reasonable. Then you realize pulling it from someone else is faster. Then you realize you don't want to stop. That addiction mechanism is what separates blood magic from everything else on this list. Necromancy has laws. It has cultural regulation. The Mages Guild debated it for centuries. Blood magic is too dangerous to even formalize. Nobody built institutions around it because the practitioners kept losing their minds first, transforming into murderous individuals who ripped blood from victims not for fuel, but because the corruption demanded it, which is, not ideal. But if blood magic corrupts the body and mind, wait until you hear what happens when you start messing with souls directly. Soul magic. Soul magic sounds boring. I know, it doesn't have the edge of blood magic or the theatrics of necromancy. Nobody's writing fan fiction about a guy holding a glowing rock. But here's the thing, soul magic is quietly the most important magical discipline in Tamriel, and almost nobody gives it the credit it deserves. Let me explain. Soul magic is a formal skill line that specializes in capturing, redirecting, and utilizing the souls of fallen creatures and sentient beings. The entire system runs on soul gems, which exist in a strict hierarchy. Petty soul gems hold the weakest souls from the lowest level creatures. Lesser gems accommodate slightly stronger ones. And it scales upward from there through common, greater, and grand categories, each one capable of containing increasingly powerful essences. It's basically a filing cabinet for the dead, which is, not ideal. But here's where it gets important. Soul gems are the fundamental mechanism for enchanting items. Every enchanted weapon, every magical ring, every piece of gear with a glow on it exists because someone trapped a soul inside a rock and smashed it into a sword. Without soul magic, enchanting doesn't work. Weapons can't be recharged. The entire magical economy of Tamriel collapses overnight, and it gets better. Soul gems are also the only way to recharge enchanted weapons once their magical energy depletes. You burn through a filled soul gem and funnel that energy right back into the blade. Without a steady supply, your fancy enchanted sword becomes a very expensive paperweight. Soul magic turns enchanting from a one-time trick into a sustainable system. So while every other school is out there looking flashy and dramatic, soul magic is is the quiet engine running underneath all of them. Multiple magical disciplines physically cannot operate without it. It's not just another school, it's foundational infrastructure, the plumbing of the entire magical world. Nobody thanks the plumber, but everyone notices when the pipes stop working. But if soul magic is the backbone of Tamriel's magical economy, the Thu'um is something else entirely. Something older, louder, and far more terrifying. Thu'um. You already know this one. Even if you've never touched an Elder Scrolls game in your life, you've heard someone yell Fus Ro Da at some point in the last decade. The Thu'um is easily the most recognizable magic on this entire list, and honestly, most people treat it like a meme, a funny shout that pushes people off cliffs, which is fine. But here's the thing. In the actual lore, the Thu'um is genuinely terrifying. The Thu'um, also called the Storm Voice, works by speaking words of power from the dragon language. Most shouts use 3 words, and each word you add makes the effect exponentially more devastating. Take Unrelenting Force. One word Fus causes a minor stagger. Annoying, sure. All 3 words together, you're launching a fully armored soldier backward with enough force to kill them on impact. That's the escalation principle in action, and it applies to every single shout. But here's where it stops being a cool gameplay mechanic and starts being existentially unsettling. Dragon language isn't just some ancient dialect that happens to have magical properties. It's the original language spoken during the formation of Mundus, the literal language reality was built with. When a dragon speaks, it's not casting a spell, it's issuing a command to existence itself, and existence listens. That's not magic in the traditional sense. That's closer to a cheat code for the universe. Dragons can do this naturally because their souls are inherently draconic. They were born speaking the language of creation, so the Thu'um comes to them like breathing. Mortals, on the other hand, have to study the way of the voice for years, sometimes decades, to master even a single word, but the wild part is that anyone can theoretically learn it. Men, mer, beast folk. Zero restrictions on species. You just need the dedication and, ideally, a very patient graybeard. The Thu'um saw its peak usage during the late Merethic and early First Era, back when knowledge of dragon language was widespread in Skyrim. As that knowledge faded among mortals, so did the practice. By the Fourth Era, the graybeards are basically the last ones keeping the tradition alive, which is a shame because we're talking about a magic system that lets you command reality by talking at it. But if you think shouting the universe into compliance sounds powerful, wait until you see what illusion magic did to an entire empire without making a single sound. Illusion. Ask any Skyrim player what illusion magic is for, and they'll tell you the same thing. Sneaky builds, pickpocketing, maybe calming a guard after you got caught stealing cheese wheels. It's the school people level up by casting Muffle while walking between cities. The general consensus is that illusion is a support school, a nice to have, the magical equivalent of training wheels. And that reputation is completely wrong. Illusion operates on a principle that separates it from every other school we've discussed so far. It doesn't modify the physical world, it doesn't conjure anything, it doesn't destroy matter or reanimate corpses. Instead, it reaches directly into the target's consciousness and rewrites what they perceive. Calm, frenzy, fear, courage, muffle, invisibility. That's offense, crowd control, and stealth wrapped into a single discipline. No other school covers that much ground simultaneously. But here's where it gets interesting. Illusion ignores the natural laws that constrain something like alteration magic, because it doesn't need to change reality. It just changes what you think reality is. And if that sounds like a technicality, let me introduce you to Jagar Tharn. Tharn was the Imperial Battle Mage, personal advisor to Emperor Uriel Septim VII. Using illusion magic, he perfectly copied the Emperor's appearance, imprisoned the real Uriel Septim in oblivion, and then sat on the Imperial throne. Not for a week, not for a month. He ruled the entire Septim Empire during what became known as the Imperial Simulacrum. An illusion mage replaced the most powerful man on Tamriel, and nobody noticed. Let that sink in. A school of magic that technically produces nothing real, that creates hallucinations by definition, possessed enough power to deceive an entire empire and alter the course of Tamrielic history. Courts, advisors, generals, the Elder Council, all of them fooled by what most players consider the weakest school in the game. This raises a genuinely uncomfortable question. If an illusion is convincing enough to change history, does it actually matter that it's technically not real? Tharn's fake emperorship had real consequences, real political decisions, real wars. The distinction between illusion and reality starts to collapse when the illusion is good enough. Most schools of magic are limited by what's physically possible. Illusion is limited only by what's mentally possible, and it turns out that ceiling is a lot higher than anyone gave it credit for. But if manipulating what people perceive sounds powerful, wait until you hear about a magic that manipulates the dream. Reality itself is built on dream magic. Everything you've seen so far, every school of magic, every shout, every soul gem, all of it operates inside a system. Rules exist, limits exist. Dream magic doesn't care about any of that. that. Here's the thing. The Elder Scrolls doesn't take place in a fantasy world. It takes place inside a dream. Not metaphorically, literally. The entire Orbis, every plane of Oblivion, every Daedric Prince, every single blade of grass in Whiterun, all of it exists as a thought inside the mind of an entity called the Godhead. This is a being so far above the divine hierarchy that Anu and Padome, the primordial forces that created everything, are themselves just figments of its imagination. The whole universe is one long cosmic nap, and that sounds like a fun piece of background lore until you realize someone figured out how to exploit it. Chime is a state of enlightenment where an individual becomes fully aware that all of existence, including themselves, is nothing more than imagination inside the Godhead's dreaming mind. You realize you aren't real. The world isn't real. Nothing is real. And then somehow, you hold on to yourself anyway. You look directly at the fact that you don't exist and you say, I am, with enough conviction that reality just kind of agrees with you. Think of it like lucid dreaming. Most people in the Elder Scrolls universe are regular dreamers, completely unaware they're inside someone else's head. Achieving Chim is the moment you become lucid, and once you do, the rules of the dream bend to your will because you understand they were never real rules to begin with. Two individuals have confirmed achievements of Chim. Vivek, who went from mortal Chimere to immortal God King of Morrowind, rewriting his own history and transcending every natural limitation a living being is supposed to have. And Tiber Septim, who used Chim to reshape the jungle province of Cyrodiil into temperate forest land, just casually terraformed an entire region because he wanted to. But here's where it gets dark. If you attempt Chim and you can't hold on to your sense of self, you zero sum. You don't die. You cease to exist entirely, erased from reality. Every memory of you, every record, every trace, gone, as if you were never born. Which is, not ideal. That's the gamble. Succeed, and you become a god who can rewrite the dream. Fail, and you become nothing permanently. No respawn, no afterlife, no soul to trap. Just absolute zero. But if bending reality through sheer philosophical willpower sounds extreme, wait until you hear about the school of magic that lets you break time itself. Time. Magic. Here's a fun question. What's scarier than magic that can kill you, control your mind, or rewrite reality? Magic that can make it so you were never born in the first place. Time magic is the manipulation of causality itself, the flow of moments, the progression of cause and effect, the fundamental sequence that everything in the Elder Scrolls universe depends on to function. And almost nothing is known about it, which, if you think about it for more than 5 seconds, is the most terrifying part. Because magic this powerful doesn't leave witnesses. Scholars across Tamriel can't even agree on whether time magic qualifies as a formal school, or if it's just something that god-tier beings can occasionally pull off when the mood strikes them. There's no curriculum, no practitioners writing textbooks, no College of Winterhold elective called Intro to Breaking Causality. The documentation is so thin that the strongest evidence for time magic's existence comes from discussions about a completely different school, shadow magic. The theory goes that shadow magic's documented ability to alter past, present, and future events might actually operate through temporal manipulation, meaning shadow magic could be time magic wearing a different hat, and that connection is worth sitting with for a second. If shadow magic, a school powerful enough to rival the Elder Scrolls themselves, is potentially just a side effect of time magic, then time magic sits above it on the food chain. That's not a comfortable thought. Direct manipulation of time would let a practitioner bypass every rule governing the universe. Cause and effect? Gone. Consequences? Optional. You could undo a war before it started, erase a person from history, or loop a single moment until you got the outcome you wanted. Every other school of magic operates within the timeline. Time magic operates on the timeline. It's the difference between playing a game and editing the game's code while it's running. The extreme rarity of documented time magic usage points to one of two conclusions. Either almost nobody has ever achieved the power necessary to pull it off, or the practice is inherently self-concealing. Think about it. If you rewrote an event, who would remember the original version? If you erased your own involvement, what evidence would remain? Time magic might be happening constantly and we'd have zero way of knowing. I don't know what to tell you. That's just how it works when you mess with the clock. But if the idea of magic that edits time makes you uncomfortable, wait until you hear about magic that draws power from the absolute nothingness beyond existence itself. Void magic. Everything we've covered so far operates within reality. Void magic doesn't. It operates beneath it, before it, in the space where reality hadn't even been invented yet. The void, also called the darkness or outer darkness, is a cosmic realm of pure darkness that exists beyond every known realm in the Orbis. It's not just some dark corner of the cosmos sitting out there waiting to be explored. It's what was there before there was a there at all. The void is where Anu and Padme, the two primordial forces whose interaction literally produced every god, every plane, every scrap of creation in the Elder Scrolls universe, originally existed. Before Mundus, before Aetherius, before Oblivion, before any of those things were even concepts, there was just the void and two opposing forces drifting through it, a space filled with everything everything and nothing simultaneously. Not empty, not full, just pure undifferentiated potential stretching across an eternity that hadn't started counting yet. Let that sink in for a second. The forces that created the gods were born from this place. The void is older than divinity itself. So when we talk about void magic, we're not talking about casting spells from a dark dimension. We're talking about manipulating the underlying substrate upon which all of creation rests. Every school of magic we've discussed, every shout, every soul gem, every illusion, all of it operates inside a framework that the void predates. Void magic isn't one school among many. It's the fundamental context in which every other form of magic exists, which is, not ideal for anyone trying to study it. And here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. Void magic practitioners do exist, but they're almost exclusively found among the most isolated, most feared groups in Tamriel. The Reachmen have produced void mages. The Ghostsong clan actively channels void magic through their void mothers. These aren't mainstream mages swapping notes at the Arcane University. These are fringe practitioners operating in traditions so secretive and dangerous that most scholars pretend they don't exist. And honestly, fair enough. Think about that. The people who successfully learned to manipulate the raw nothingness that predates gods aren't writing textbooks. They're hiding in the most remote corners of Tamriel, wrapped in rituals that would make a Daedric cultist uncomfortable. Nobody's teaching this at Winterhold. The scariest magic on this list isn't the one with the biggest explosion. It's the one where the people who practice it decided the rest of the world doesn't need to know. But if the void represents the darkness before creation, the next entry represents what happens when you learn to step into the shadows. Creation left behind. Shadow magic. Most players have never heard of shadow magic, and honestly that's kind of the point. It's the single most underrated force in Elder Scrolls lore. A school of magic so powerful it was explicitly stated to rival the Elder Scrolls themselves. The artifacts the entire franchise is named after. And somehow, almost nobody talks about it. Here's the thing, shadow magic wasn't some fringe theory scribbled in a forgotten journal. It was a fully developed magical discipline pioneered by a man named Azuri Nightwielder, who is recognized as the first and greatest shadow mage to ever live. Azura didn't just dabble in darkness. He discovered the fundamental nature of shadows themselves and built an entire system of magic around manipulating them. During the Third Era, shadow magic was relatively common across Hammerfell, High Rock, and Skyrim. Real practitioners in real provinces doing real things with it. This wasn't theoretical, and what could those practitioners actually do? Quite a lot, as it turns out. Shadow mages could create shadow gates using artifacts called shadow keys, essentially ripping open portals for instant teleportation between distant locations. They could absorb shadows directly into themselves to increase their own power, which is a sentence that sounds like it belongs in a completely different franchise. They could step into a shadow and simply vanish, reappearing somewhere else entirely. Cool. That's also a thing that happened, but here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. Shadow magic wasn't just a clever trick for sneaking around. The lore explicitly states that shadow magic had the power to change the past, present, and future. Let that sink in. Not predict the future, not observe the past, change them. That puts shadow magic on the same level as the Elder Scrolls, which are supposed to be the single most powerful artifacts in the entire universe. The fact that a mortal-developed school of magic achieved equivalence with cosmic artifacts that transcend time itself is absolutely insane. What makes this even stranger is the mystery of why shadow magic became obscure. Something this powerful doesn't just fade away because people got bored. Knowledge dissipated over time, practitioners died without passing techniques to successors, and gradually the entire school slipped into near total obscurity. Whether that happened naturally or whether something actively suppressed it, nobody knows for certain. But a magic system capable of rewriting causality going quiet feels less like an accident and more like a problem that solved itself. I don't know what to tell you. The real significance of shadow magic is what it represents within the broader lore. It proves that godlike power wasn't locked behind dragon language or dream enlightenment or divine intervention. There was a completely separate path to reality manipulation sitting right there in the shadows, accessible to mortal practitioners who understood the right principles. Azuri Nightwielder found it, others practiced it, and then it just disappeared. But if shadow magic could rival the Elder Scrolls through manipulating darkness, wait until you hear what the Dwemer accomplished by manipulating sound. Tonal architecture. Every single form of magic we've covered so far manipulates something within reality. Tonal architecture doesn't do that. Tonal architecture manipulates reality itself, and it does it with sound. Here's the concept, and it's going to sound insane, but stay with me. The entire Elder Scrolls Scrolls universe, the Orbice, everything that exists is a song. Not metaphorically, not poetically, literally a song. Or when the Orbice was created, there was an original sound, a tone that rang out across all of existence, and everything that has ever happened since then is just a new note being added to that composition. Every creature, every mountain, every Daedric prince, every soul gem sitting in your inventory, all of it is part of one continuous, infinite piece of music. The Dwemer figured this out, and then they built instruments to play it, using vast machines, resonant crystals, and sacred mathematics that would make your head cave in. The Dwemer developed a science that could isolate, fragment, and rearrange the fundamental tones of existence. They weren't casting spells, they weren't channeling magicka. They were composing new verses in the Song of Reality and forcing the universe to sing along. Other mages manipulate fire or ice or souls. Tonal architects manipulate the source code that fire, ice, and souls are written in. But here's where it stops being theoretical and starts being terrifying. The Dwemer didn't just theorize about building a god, they actually built one. The Numidium is a 1,000-foot tall golem, constructed entirely through tonal architecture principles designed to function as a literal deity for the Dwemer people. Not a statue, not a symbol. A functioning, walking, reality-breaking god made out of metal and math. Most civilizations pray to their gods. The Dwemer looked at the concept of divinity and said, we can engineer that. The tools they use to pull this off are equally unhinged. Sundar and Keening, two of the most important artifacts in Morrowind, functioned by isolating pure tones from the heart of Lorkhan, the heart of reality itself, and then fragmenting those tones into component frequencies that could be manipulated and reshaped. They were literally dissecting the heartbeat of creation and rearranging it like sheet music, which is, not ideal for the structural integrity of the universe. And then there's the disappearance. Every single Dwemer vanished simultaneously across the entire continent. No bodies, no souls, no trace, gone. The leading theory among lore scholars is that their mastery of tonal architecture is directly responsible. Some believe they played a note so powerful, so fundamentally disruptive to the Song of Existence, that it removed them from the composition entirely. Not killed, not transported, erased from the music. Others propose something even more staggering, that the Dwemer didn't fail at all. That they successfully transcended existence itself, stepping outside the song they'd spent centuries learning to play. Nobody knows which version is true, and that's what makes tonal architecture the most haunting magic in the entire Elder Scrolls universe. It's not just the most powerful, it's the only school of magic where the practitioners got so good at rewriting reality that reality might have written them out in response. An entire civilization mastered the fundamental language of existence, built a god to prove they could, and then vanished so completely that thousands of years later, we're still standing in their empty cities wondering what the last note sounded like. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.